What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be doing a video for all you guys out there that are beginners. If you're just coming into anatomy phys, or if you just don't know anything about the heart and you're looking to learn, this is the video for you. We're going to be going over an introduction to the heart as well as getting into blood flow. So, again, we are going to be starting totally from scratch. If you know absolutely nothing about the heart, like I said, this is the place to start. We're going to go over basic structure and eventually get into the blood flow of the heart. So without further ado, let's get into this video. So this video is going to be broken down into four main sections. First, we're going to talk about the basic structure of the heart. Then we're going to go into the internal anatomy. Next, we'll talk about surrounding anatomy that plays a pretty key role into how blood flows through the heart. And then finally, we will go over blood flow. So let's get into those. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the basic structure. First, before we get into any actual structures, we need to talk about how we use directional orientation when talking about the heart. Normally, when you think of left versus right, you would think of, oh, well, this is the left side because that's my left, and this is the right side because that's my right. However, when we're talking about the heart or any structure in anatomy, you have to imagine that you are doing or you are identifying the left and right of the person's perspective whose body part you are looking at, per se. So if you were looking at somebody's heart like this, you were looking at their heart straight on, your left would actually be the right of that person, right? This is their right side. Even though it's your left, it is their right. And same goes for this. This might be the right side from your perspective. However, this is actually the left side of the person you are looking at. And we will always use the direction, the right or left of the person we are looking at. So always the right side will be your left and the left side will be your right. That's super important when it comes to identifying structures because obviously you can get a lot of stuff mixed up really easily if you're identifying left and right wrong. So super important there. And then next for top and bottom, obviously that's much more straightforward. The top side of the heart is just this portion here towards the top, and the bottom is going to be down here. And one important note is that the bottom of the heart, this little arc down here, is called the apex of the heart. So that's just something you might have to identify on an exam. And next, for major vessels, we first have the superior and inferior vena cava. So superior vena cava is going to be this vessel right here that leads to the top of the heart. Superior means top, inferior means bottom. So if this is our superior vena cava, our inferior vena cava is just going to be this vessel right here coming into the heart from the bottom half. Next, we have the aorta. The aorta is just going to be this large red arc that comes out of the top half of the heart and then kind of arcs down and starts to come back down behind it. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but really all you need to know is that this big red arc on the top of the heart is called the aorta. Next, the pulmonary arteries are going to be this large blue vessel first coming out of the heart, and then our arteries are going to be here. We have our left pulmonary artery, and then coming out over on this side comes behind the aorta, and then it comes out right here is going to be our left pulmonary artery, or our right pulmonary artery, excuse me. So, yeah, left pulmonary artery, right pulmonary artery. They come out from here in the pulmonary trunk, and then they go out from the heart. Next, our pulmonary veins are going to be the vessels here that are coming back into the heart. We can see them again on the left and right side of the heart. And those are going to be kind of the main vessels that bring blood either into or out of the heart. And finally, another important note for when you're looking at some heart diagrams is that vessels that are blue are going to carry deoxygenated blood. So let's look at what vessels are blue, right? We have our superior and our inferior vena cava, both of which are blue, along with our pulmonary arteries. This indicates that they are carrying deoxygenated blood, whereas the red vessels are carrying oxygenated blood. What are our red vessels? We have the aorta and we have our pulmonary veins. So we'll get more into what oxygenated versus deoxygenated blood is later in the video, but that is just an important note to know and an important way or an easy way to identify what kind of blood is going to be traveling in these different vessels. So now that we have talked about the basic structure of the heart, let's talk about the internal anatomy. We're going to have four main heart chambers that we have to know. First, the right atrium, which is going to be this chamber right here. The right ventricle, which is going to be this chamber here. The left atrium, which is going to be right here. And the left ventricle, which is going to be right here. Next, after the chambers, excuse me, we have valves that are associated with those chambers, right? So between all those valves, we're going to have something that is basically mediating the flow of blood throughout these chambers. So between the right atrium and the right ventricle, we're going to have the right atrioventricular valve, also known as the AV valve. And atrioventricular, a good way to remember that is that the valve is simply between the atria and the ventricle, right? Next, after the AV valve, blood will come across the pulmonary valve. Again, this is pretty easy to remember if we remember our basic structure that we talked about earlier. This is the pulmonary artery right here. So, blood going into here is going through the pulmonary valve. Next, we have the left AV valve, which is exactly the same as the right AV valve. It is just going from the left atrium to the left ventricle. And finally, coming from the left ventricle, we can't really see it super well, but there is a valve right here that is going to be the aortic valve because blood is going to be going into the aorta, right? So all these valves make pretty good sense if you have a decent grasp of the basic structure or the anatomy of the internal or external heart. Other important structures that we have to know about are first going to be the papillary muscles. The papillary muscles are going to be these little extrusions coming out of the walls of the heart that have these cords attached to them. These cords are called the chordae tendineae. And you notice that these cords actually go and attach to the flaps of the valves we talked about earlier. So, the main function of the papillary muscles in the chordae tendineae is actually to pull and shut the valves, right? So, they're going to allow or mediate blood flow between these different chambers. And we also have to know what myocardium is. Myocardium is just going to be all of this tissue that is in the walls of the heart, right? So it's all throughout here, it is surrounding every single chamber of the heart. And myocardium is essentially the muscle that is contracting the heart. Super important because that muscle contraction is what drives blood flow. And something important to know about a specific kind of myocardium that we have to know about is the interventricular septum. I kind of marked it out here earlier, but it is just the myocardium that lies between the two ventricles. As the name suggests, interventricular septum. It is between the ventricles. So now that we've talked about the basic structure of the heart, the internal anatomy, let's talk about some of the surrounding anatomy, which will be kind of the last puzzle piece that we need to understand blood flow throughout the heart. So, surrounding the heart are the right and left lungs. We can see them obviously right here. And the pulmonary arteries, which we again remember are going to be these right here, which are the vessels leaving the heart, are going to bring blood into the lungs and out of the heart. So blood is leaving the heart and going into the lungs. And if we remember earlier, we said that blood that is in a vessel that is blue on a model indicates that the blood in this vessel is deoxygenated. So we have deoxygenated blood leaving the heart and then it goes to the lungs. The only reason that oxygen is going to the lungs is so that it can receive oxygen. This is going to happen through gas exchange. Gas exchange is essentially where we are exchanging gases within the lungs, as it suggests, right? So, what's actually happening, we are giving oxygen to the blood that is coming in. So, if deoxygenated blood comes into the lungs, it needs oxygen. So, it's going to take oxygen and it's going to get rid of CO2, which is just a waste product. And then once the blood has received the oxygen, it will return to the heart via the pulmonary veins. We can see that the pulmonary veins are going to be red. So that means that the blood in them is oxygenated, right? It's coming in here and is oxygenated. So it is red. And once we have oxygenated blood, we are ready to bring that blood to tissues so that we can have gas exchange occur there as well. Because why do we want oxygen in the blood? We want it in the blood so that it can carry it to our tissues, like our muscles and every other thing in our body, and give that oxygen to those other tissues because oxygen is what drives life, right? So once that oxygenated blood gets to the tissues, it will go through gas exchange there as well, where we will now exchange the oxygen and take CO2 from those tissues. So we will give it the fuel and we will take the waste. And then we remember how the superior and inferior vena cava are blue vessels. So what does that mean? The blood is deoxygenated. And that makes sense because we just dropped off all the oxygen at those tissues. So now we are coming back into the heart with deoxygenated blood, which needs to again get to the lungs, pick up more oxygen, and then bring that to the tissues. So we can see how this cycle kind of starts to form. And we have to know that the lungs are surrounding the heart to understand how we are getting this oxygen and getting rid of this CO2, right? So, again, just to reiterate, the lungs' primary function is just to add oxygen to the blood and also take away CO2 from the deoxygenated blood. So, if that makes sense to you, let's go on to blood flow. If that didn't make sense, I encourage you to go back a few minutes and rewatch the previous few slides just so you really have a good understanding of this before you start trying to learn blood flow. Because something I can't stress enough is that if you don't understand the anatomy of the heart, all the anatomy, right? The basic structure, the internal structure, and the surrounding anatomy, blood flow is going to be so difficult to understand. So I encourage you, if this hasn't made sense yet, go back a few minutes, rewatch it, and come back here and see if you're ready to learn blood flow. All right, so if you made it this far in the video, you are ready to learn blood flow, so let's get into it. First, blood is going to enter the heart through the superior and inferior vena cava and fill the right atrium, right? So we're going to have blood entering the heart from the superior half and the inferior half from the vena cava into the right atrium. Next, blood is going to move through the right AV valve to the right ventricle, right? So we're going to move through the AV valve and we're going to be in the right ventricle. Now, blood is going to move through the pulmonary valve. So we remember the pulmonary valve leads to the pulmonary trunk. And next, blood is going to leave the heart via the right and left pulmonary arteries. So we again see that here. Goes through the right and left pulmonary arteries, and it is going to go to the lungs. And step 5 here, we can see it's not on this diagram because we don't see the lungs here, but we know that oxygen is going to be added to the blood in the lungs. And once that happens, blood is going to return to the heart via the right and left pulmonary veins, which are going to be here and here, right? So those are going to be coming from the lungs back into the heart. And both the right and left pulmonary veins are going to lead to the left atrium. That is really important. A lot of people misunderstand that when they see the right pulmonary veins way over on the right side of the heart here. You have to know that they actually come in empty into the left atrium here. Blood will then move through the left AV valve into the left ventricle, and then blood will travel through the aortic valve, which will lead the blood to the aorta, right? Kind of goes behind the pulmonary trunk here, and then we'll be in the aorta. And then blood finally will leave the aorta and will go to all the different tissues of the body, where it will then, again, like we talked about earlier, drop off the oxygen that it just picked up. And what will happen after that? That deoxygenated blood will then return to the heart via the superior and the inferior vena cava, and this process will just repeat over and over and over again. All right, so that is going to be it for this video. You have now gone from knowing absolutely nothing about the heart to now knowing how blood flows through the heart. So if this helped you guys out at all, please let me know in the comments. If there's anything that was unclear also, feel free to contact me anyway through the comments, shoot me a DM. I'll be glad to explain anything to you guys. And yeah, I hope you guys learned something today and be on the watch for more videos like this.